Hey guys, welcome back to Ride Out MMA. My name's Connor. Today we're going to be going over the top 2022 knockouts posted by the UFC. They just put this video up the other day, and I figured it'd be fun to go through it. I saw some really cool techniques and figured we could break it down, look at all the little things that led up to that happening, stuff that I remember when watching it live, the styles of the fighters, just everything that goes into a super cool knockout. So if you like MMA stuff, techniques, drills, fundamentals, anything really MMA related, make sure you check out the rest of my page. Some really good breakdowns of other videos there, which I will throw up on the screen somewhere around here if I figure out how to use YouTube. But yeah, let's get into it. Make sure you like the video because it helps out. Okay, guys, let's get right into it. First fight here, we got Ferguson versus Chandler. And if you follow UFC at all, you know exactly how this went down. And I got actually a lot to say about this, even though it's like technically not that interesting of a knockout. I know, hot take on that. But, you know, Ferguson didn't really stand a chance coming into this one, if you ask me. He did really good in the first round, though, which was just shocking in itself. It never looks like it feels good. And the backflips to follow up. Yeah, the interesting thing about this knockout for me, and maybe other people are thinking it too, but I think I'm coming to this conclusion first, and I want to be the first guy to say that the front snap kick to the jaw, right up the middle to the guy's face, is going to be the kick of 2023. You know, remember when the calf kick started popping off and everybody's talking about, oh my God, the calf kick's changing the game. Get ready for when people start throwing the front snap kick to the fucking chin. Because I'm seeing it happen a lot more, and especially on those types of guys. Like we saw it with Frankie Edgar. Right. I don't think that's in this video, but yeah, with Frankie Edgar, it's always those guys who kind of have the hunched over stance, right? They're bobbing their head left and right. What can those guys do about a front snap kick up the middle to their face? There's really not a lot. Your best option is maybe to close the distance, but now, right, if you're throwing that front snap kick, you should already be at range, and now you risk running into the knee. You could try moving away, and then you're just out of range. Nothing really happened there, and then the guy throwing the snap kick is, you know, kind of still getting the result that he wants. But there's not, I don't know, I haven't figured out, like, what is the counter to a snap kick right up the middle, right? A really safe, foolproof counter. Leave it in the comments if you know what that is. But I think that's going to be the kick that guys are going to start throwing a lot more nonstop, right? Cheeto snapping it up. I remember the other day, who's the guy that Dillashaw gave the big concussion to, and now he just came back, but he was fighting Darren Elkins. And if you watch that fight, he kicked Darren Elkins in the face with this kick so many times. It was disgusting to watch. But, you know, like if you watched UFC, you see Darren Elkins fight, he doesn't give a shit. He'll just keep walking forward and just keep eating those things. But any other, you know, someone with a half a brain that is fighting would be like, okay, maybe I'll pull back a little bit. I don't want to just keep running into it. But yeah, that guy's just going to power through and just keep eating that. But you heard it here first. I'm the one saying it. This is the new calf kick, that front snap kick to the chin. And I know, we all know Anderson Silva. It's not like hot take, fresh news. But after Anderson Silva hit it, you never really saw much after that. Right? Machida, I guess? Or was Machida first? I don't know. Both those guys hit that kick. Doesn't really matter who hit it first. But regardless, after that happened, it just wasn't happening anymore. Like, why'd everybody stop? They just forget about it. It's not that amazing of a kick. I learned that as a white belt in karate. Anyways, that's my hot take, but you heard it here first. Chandler put it on the map. And it should start happening a lot more. I'm sticking to that. There's Cheeto. Here we go. Who couldn't love this knockout? When this happened live, who wasn't fucking standing up, throwing their hands up in the air? And it's such a simple setup, and the beautiful part about it, Leon led with that feint. And you know, before he threw this, he had to have recognized, oh my God, Usman is making a mistake right now. He's because during this fight, if you guys haven't watched it, which I hope you have, and you should if you haven't, not super exciting. It was mostly, the first round was pretty exciting. Like, Leon did really well and ended up on top of Usman, which who would have ever guessed? But anyway, so it looked like Leon won the first round. Then the second, the third, the fourth, Leon just got dominated by Usman. He really couldn't get anything off. So you're going into that fifth round thinking there's no way that he's going to pull this out. There's always a chance, but you're thinking there's no way he's going to pull this out. And you have to know that Leon's fight IQ, he's watching Usman. He realizes that Usman is making a very fundamental mistake. And if you watched it close, maybe we'll get a slow motion version of it. I don't think so. We'll pause it in my head. Boom. Usman started backing up. He was actually, I think he was told by his corner to sort of like pull off the gas a little bit, be a little bit more reserved. Don't take any unnecessary risks. You got it in the bag. All right, you're not going to lose this fight. So he started doing this really poor mistake where when Leon started pressuring him, he was reaching out a little bit with his lead hand and doing some like sort of walking back footwork. Instead of leading in his fighter stance where his back foot would step and then he'd follow with his lead, he started just like literally walking backwards. And that doesn't set you up for any athletic movement. You have to sort of reset your stance before you can start moving athletically again. So he's kind of just walking around the ring, like literally walking like a regular person. And in Leon's mind, he must have seen it well beforehand, because there's a couple instances right before he throws this setup where he leads with the hand a little bit, sort of just checking like, is it true? Is Usman really doing this? And can you imagine the euphoria in your head where you're like, I have the simplest, most straightforward setup to knock this guy out, but I got one chance at it. Because if I try it and fail, he's not going to make that same mistake again. Usman's not dumb. But Usman still didn't realize that he was making that mistake, and Leon capitalized exactly how you should in that moment, which is just like, oh, it gives me goosebumps to think about being in that position, recognizing the moment just when you're going to kick this guy in the head. You're like, I can knock him out right now. Like, who could put themselves, you're at the top stage in the entire world, and you're thinking in your head, like, I have this moment. It's not chance. It's not just, luck, however you want to put it. I know how I can finish the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet right in front of me in the fifth round after, see, I'm getting goosebumps again thinking about it. Wow, it's really one of the top moments in MMA history, this knockout right here. You got to feel for Usman. There it is. You got to feel for Usman. See, look, he leans his head right into such a simple, actually one of the videos that I just put up the other day on proper parrying defense, not to put your head to the outside of the hand, which is common knowledge, but hey, you're in the fifth round of a fight, maybe you just don't recognize. I don't know what was going through Usman's head, other than I blame his coaches for telling him to come off the gas a little bit, and he starts walking backwards and doing foolish mistakes. But man, you go into Leon's corner, you got to pull up that clip. Leon's corner got in his grill and was just like, you gonna win this? Are you gonna go for this? There's one chance, blah, blah. And oh man, it's hype. If I could remember it, I'd tell you about it, but I can't. Anyways, what a knockout. Boom. Right to the jaw. Good night, buddy. Feint. High kick. Yeah, you earned that, buddy. You earned that. What we got next, though? Actually, I already did a breakdown on this, ironically, but let's talk about it again. Such a sick little hook there. Let's go back. Just watch that again. Like, everybody that's been following the UFC this year knows that Alex here, I'm not going to try to say his last name because everybody roasted me last time. Piera. I can't speak Portuguese. I know he's Brazilian. But, yeah, so he's fighting Strickland, and Strickland gets a lot of shit. Okay, he gets a lot of shit. He's annoying. He's really cocky. He kind of says, like, crazy shit all the time. But he's still a good fighter. I don't care what anybody says. He knows how to scrap. He can throw down. it's a little bit more reserved than he makes himself out to be. It's actually very strategic. And the way that I look at his style is it's almost like Muay Thai adapted for MMA. Yeah, you don't really see guys in MMA take a Muay Thai stance for obvious reasons. If you look at the way that guys in Muay Thai stand, they're often quite tall. They have a very narrow stance. They're very heavy on their back foot, light on their front foot. And that's a perfect stance if you're competing in Muay Thai, where it's a purely striking sport. Opposed to how most MMA fighters stand, where they have a much wider base, their hands aren't held as high, there are often a lot more movement involved because there's the threat of wrestling, and everybody watches MMA knows this. You're going to get pinned up against the fence. You can't be standing like you're doing Muay Thai. You'll be taken down in like 2 seconds flat. But Strickland has done a really good job in adapting that style by using the jab is really like the main part of it. And he's really good with hand blocking, and he's confident too. He usually gets guys on the back foot a little bit, or just keeping distance in general. So it's harder to wrestle a guy like that. And he's very confident in his wrestling defense. Not to mention just the style of training that he does. It's mostly sparring based, so his timing, his reaction to fight scenarios is like really quick. So that's the benefit of training the way that he does, albeit like he's probably has a brain made of mush right now. Regardless, he was doing his style. It's not smart to do against a guy like Alex, but when Alex was leading into this fight, Alex kept pinning him to the chest with the jab. He's feinting. A couple times he went for the head in the start of the round, and he couldn't quite reach Sean's head because Sean stands tall, and he uses his hands, and he's always in the way of a lot of those shots. He really doesn't get hit a lot. It's a weird defense, but he doesn't get hit a lot. His legs get beat up, but he's also really good at checking because of that narrow stance. He can lift his leg up really quickly. Interesting style if you really think about it. But anyways, Alex kept reaching for the head in the start of the round, couldn't quite get to the head. So the amazing striker that he is, he instantly made that adjustment. Okay, I can't reach to his head. I'm going to start going for the body. That's just like fighting 101 when it comes to somebody with good head movement, or really just like you can't quite find the range to reach the head. You start attacking the body to hopefully get to the head, and that's exactly what happens here. So he's going for the head, going for the chest, going for the belly, right? Like just setting that jab low, throwing a lot of low kicks to set up, right, Sean with this left hook, which we watch here. There's the low kick for you. Boom. And it's very subtle, but if you watch that moment in slow motion, there's a very subtle level change and sort of hand lead to the body, and Sean dips that same side hand down, which is a perfect feint setup, where you've got his hand away from his face, you've closed the distance, you step out, and then reset to throw that left hook. So it's that very short 1-2. Around the side, or rather like 1-3 if you want to talk in boxing numbers or whatever. And then the follow-up is just sick. It's just that little pop right to his jaw before he's even on his feet. Even that like takes amazing accuracy to find that shot in that moment. Yeah, Sean really didn't stand a chance. So again, you see him sort of lead down. Maybe it's not quite a pump, but he leads downward, and you can sort of see it from behind here, but Sean is already reaching just a little bit. And Pieta is turning that punch. See, it's already below his shoulder line there, but it creeps up right to the jaw afterwards. Beautiful lead hook there. Now, Sean really didn't stand it. Look how far he reached. Like, you kidding me with that? And you can't even blame Sean, because Sean... Right, it's a lot. Like he looks pretty fucking dumb here. Like he's standing in an MMA fight compared to Alex. Okay, that looks that. But you can see what I mean when I'm saying this is Muay Thai for MMA, and I'll stand by that. It's not a good look for Muay Thai, but that's why guys don't stand like Muay Thai fighters in MMA, right? He has this really light lead leg. His back foot is literally flat on the ground, which you never see. His hand is fully extended out. He has this high guard. Sorry, feel bad for him, but I can't stop laughing now. That is so funny. And he reached so far to try to get that hit. He really didn't. Oh my God. It's already too late. And he really thought it was going to be a jab. And that's the most beautiful feint that you could possibly do, right? You've led a guy into a space of thinking that he's in comfort, and you pull the rug out under him, and he's completely fucked. So good night, Sean. That's all right. Good job. Oh, yeah. Most improved fighter of 2022. Am I wrong? Cheeto? Who was talking about Cheeto before this? He's like the new Dustin Poirier. Oh, beautiful. And the follow-up shots, too. Yeah, that was a great setup. I actually didn't see this fight. I can't remember exactly why. Yeah, that's nice. But all of these like old school fighters like Dom, there's so much footage out there. You can sort of sense a little bit more and like get a better understanding of the way that these guys move and react to your movements. But you see Southpaw versus Orthodox here. Dom usually shifts to the outsides of his opponents as best as he can, albeit it's really hard to tell. And I know in this fight, he was doing really well against Cheeto, and my friend told me that he thought that Dom was winning. I don't know. I don't really have that much of an opinion on who was winning or not. But you could see the way that Dom, as he usually does, shifts to the outside. And he does it in a really well way. You can see how much distance he's covered, but he's already been cut off by Cheeto, like catching him right in the face. Let's click back just a second here. I want to go a little bit slower. Right, he paused down, and it looks like Dom is trying to set up sort of a shifting jab. So as he was setting, he was hoping to pop that jab into Cheeto's face, which just glanced off and maybe could have saved the fact that this kick was coming. Because if he landed it, it might have off-balanced Cheeto enough not to get that kick up there. But he's slipping to the outside. Again, this really, really common setup that we're seeing so much, slipping to the outside of Cheeto's rear hand, thinking that maybe just that straight is coming up. But instead, obviously, the kick is following right behind it. So he guided his head into that kick. And knowing the way that Dom moves, Cruz, whatever you want to call him, he's always shifting to the outsides of these punches, and he's really hard to read, but it's sort of easier, and I'm not saying it's easy per se, but there's tells where you can guide a person based on the patterns that they've presented to you throughout the fight. And this is later in the fight, but the patterns that he laid out, Cheeto must have recognized that if I throw my cross, he's going to shift to the outside, throw his head a little bit too dramatically that way, and then you're going to run right into that shot. You see a lot of sort of newer guys not necessarily pick up the style of Dominic Cruz, but newer guys who were sort of thrown into sparring too soon. They move in a erratic way where they're whipping their heads around. They sort of have this crazy footwork, and you see levels of it. So Dominic Cruz is that guy where he was sort of thrown into the fray with bigger guys, and this is what he had to do to survive. And he's really, let's say, the best of this idea of movement, where it's all over the place. There's a lot of switching. There's no consistency to it, and there's really not that much subtlety to it. All right, it's always these big, like, sweeping motions where it makes it really, really hard for you to touch him, and he's constantly just poking at you. At the lower end of the spectrum, where you see guys who I've trained who sort of were thrown into sparring way too soon. When they're coming out and getting into like good fundamental striking with pad work, or I'm trying to get them to do drills, they're all over the fucking map. There's no consistency whatsoever in the quality of their striking, the quality of their defenses, and the only way you can train this, I think, effectively, is with tons of sparring, which just isn't a safe way of doing things. To me, when it comes to striking, like, subtlety is king. And this, again, is not subtle to me. If you're subtle in the way that you move while still getting the same result, you're not going to open yourselves up to these big dramatic counters that you ended up running into yourself. Like, Cheeto had to do half the work. Look how low Dominic's head is here. And if in MMA, your head should only be off on this angle if you're planning on, or rather this low if you're trying to shoot in on somebody. I don't know. That's my hot take on it. I think I used to love Dominic's style, but now I think it's like actually detriment to MMA. Maybe not a detriment. It's like exciting, it's cool, it's fun, but I don't think it's good for beginners to see that type of movement and be like, oh, I want to replicate that. You're not really gonna. Like, that's only Dominic Cruz can move like that. It's only going to create bad habits at the start. That's kind of what I was getting around to. Man, Cheeto, though, he's a badass. Not to mention his front kick knockout. They're loving it. Who wouldn't?
Maybe the most dangerous 135-pounder on the planet. What I love about what Hill's doing is the forward pressure. You've got to keep Walker moving like this the whole fight. If you keep Walker moving like this, you got to dodge the crazy punch.
Am I the only guy on the planet that thought Johnny Walker was going to be something? I know he was super exciting, but I feel like I had so much belief in him becoming the champion. I don't know. I like him. I used to really like him. But, yeah, Jamal Hill's got hands of steel. And actually, when I was watching this knockout back a couple of times, what I want you to pay attention to most closely here is Walker's footwork. So Walker's footwork here is where all the flaws happen. First off, you can't see it, but his lead foot is to the outside of his rear foot. So he stepped his lead foot across, and then he followed with his rear foot after. In that moment, he has no ability to really set up a thoughtful offense or defense if he needed to attack or needed to defend himself. So keep watching his legs here. So he shifted into that stance from that cross step, which is poor fundamentals right off the bat. You could disagree with me if you like. There's so much footage online of guys doing this style of footwork and getting caught because of it, and this is one of those moments. So he stepped to the outside there with his lead foot, followed up with his rear, and by that moment, he's ready to strike. He would have been ready to strike if he just stepped with his rear foot. Right, but instead he crossed himself, and he had to take an extra step to set himself up to strike. So he catches himself down. For one, he pumps his jab before he even throws it. And he starts leaning in with, I don't even know what that punch was supposed to be. Maybe a hook or an overhand. It didn't look like it was going to be a straight. But it gave Jamal enough time to recognize that he went step, and then he sort of bounced into his legs, and he pumped his jab. All Jamal had to do was step in and throw that overhand. And it gets right over top of that lead hand and sat him down. Let's see if we get another image of it, or rather, another view. I would really like to see that footwork, the lead hand again.
It just shuts him off.
Shuts him off. Okay, let's go back just an inch here. So watch. Right, he's stepping that rear foot out, bounces in, and it gave him that moment. He knew exactly when Walker was going to step into that punch. He knew before he even threw it, just based on what his footwork telegraphed. He sort of stepped, bounced in his legs, and then started moving in on a strike. If he was moving with more subtlety and also with good fundamentals, then you wouldn't have recognized when Walker was going to strike. But he made it too obvious, so you get hit.
Like you talked about, Michael, you lose lose something there. That energy is energy that you did
Meatball
use for
Molly.
the fight. You used it on the walkout, which is
I don't
fine.
know. Hype Train's going to
You
die
gotta be
soon.
ready for that. But it's not just...
Sick knockout, though. You can't take that away from her. And what's really cool about this technique specifically is right in this moment here. So her opponent, what's her name? I can't remember. Carden. I'm trying to read her shorts. Doesn't matter. Okay, so black here, not black person, but black top and bottoms, whatever you want to call them. Shorts, black shorts. So she's framing on Molly's face with her lead hand there. And any time that you're framing on somebody, okay, so you see that frame there is on the opposite side to where your hand is. So it's like if I took my left hand and put it on Molly's left shoulder rather than on her right shoulder, which would be mirrored on the same side. So I put it on her left shoulder. In that moment, this entire side of the body seems exposed, but really Molly is at a bigger risk because all this other girl has to do is release the frame and throw her punch, and she should be safe. And Molly doesn't really have an opportunity to shoot either, right? She can't get below that elbow if it follows her. So in that moment, Molly is at a significant disadvantage. Well, maybe not so much anymore. But regardless, when somebody has that frame on you, you do have, actually both parties have a great opportunity to spin. Imagine in or like imaginary universe, theoretically. Theoretically, the black girl could have span as well and also hit Molly. This is a perfect time for her to spin and hit Molly. It's a clear path where if she went spin elbow, she would have hit her. And vice versa for Molly. Right? She can spin the other way and also bring that elbow up. So any time that they have that frame on the opposite side, right, you're crossing your body, right, there's a great opportunity to spin and throw. The defense for that frame usually is to block behind your opponent's elbow and push it across their body, and they'll sort of get stuck like this. Right, opposed to fighting against it. But even smarter than this, albeit riskier, is to spin and throw this elbow. But it is there, obviously. And she had a moment to sort of set it up, too. Set up the spin elbow. That girl was trying to follow her. How do you say his name? Tapuria, yes.
Constantly making
Man, Georgia, our Georgian guys put out some mean fighters. God. There's nowhere he's not good. I think he's going to be champ. But he comes in with that slip jab, right? Very tight, perfectly structured overhand. You see his elbows almost in line with his body. Right, just clips him. But by that point, it looks like he's already looking at his ribs. He's reading his body exposed. So in the middle of that, he wasn't thinking overhand shovel hook. He just, in that perfect scenario where he hit the overhand, and he's like, okay, what is he doing now? And his mind could process this moment that quickly where he went, oh, great, boom. I could land that beautiful shovel hook, right, perfectly placed on his liver. Not even worrying about getting hit back. All right, he got clipped, but he knows his has all the heat on it. Boom, and one more overhand. God. What's cool about those punches is they sort of follow the same plane, an overhand and a shovel hook. A shovel hook being a hook that comes to the body basically on a 45-degree angle. Right? We have hooks, we have uppercuts, and we have shovel hooks. Right, we have hooks, and then we have overhands. And those follow the same planes as our shoulders. So if you look at me here, right, this being the shovel hook, this being the overhand. So those should flow just seamlessly together, and this is a perfect example of how to execute an overhand, boom, shovel hook, overhand. And you know the shovel hook hurt him because he paused for a second. looking at him, hoping that that hook that he tried to counter with hurt Tapuria, but there's no way. Man, he's going to be champ. What we got here?
And you're seeing that in the way that he's striking right now. He's staying on Benitez right now.
And a little bit of peppering. Melted him. Nothing too interesting there. If he had the opportunity to clinch up, he would have been good for him if he could, but obviously he didn't have that chance.
Incredible.
I don't know, he's just standing square in front of him. It's kind of a cool example of, like, sometimes, you know, whatever works, works. Because the way that the black fighter is standing there is he's, like, perfectly square in his feet. And somebody mentioned this to me about, like, Mike Tyson the other day, where they're like, wow, it's so interesting that that guy, technically his fundamentals aren't ideal. Like, usually, like the way that he stood, you know, the style of fighting that he brought to boxing and, like, sort of, like, made famous. He would stand almost perfectly square when he's right beside you. That's not really a good way to stand in most fight sport. Usually you want to be leading with one foot or the other so you can generate power and be able to move. But if you apply it correctly and in the right moments, then you can be a killing machine and keep the power going from both sides, which, you know, Tyson always did. And that's not me being disparaging of Tyson at all. It's just cool to see how different stances can be applied in those in other scenarios. And to me, it's really about whatever works, works. I think there's good fundamentals that we should maintain, but if a blind guy throws a punch and he knocks somebody out, you're going to tell him that he did it wrong? Right, his eyes, he wasn't looking at him? I don't know. It's a weird analogy, but I'm sticking to it.
Uganda's David Onama busted into the UFC win column tonight.
Mean KO. Yang Saddam.
Good sign if you're Marlon Moraes to be able to take shots like that, to be in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moraes too. Man, I wanted him to be champ. I wanted him to be champ bad. Yang Saddam's mean though. He's got some power, and he timed that perfectly. And let's just go back just a hair, just so we can watch that when that happens. So,
shots like that, be in it.
Yeah,
Go
absolutely.
to here. So he knew Moraes was trying to reach for him with the jab. And when you reach with the jab versus keeping it right underneath you and you use your footwork to close the distance or rather lean over yourself, a perfect counter for that is the slip inside overhand, right? Because you're kind of bringing your face in with the punch, which if he did it here, the same result would have happened. But he sees that, and right before Moraes throws that jab again, right, Yang Sadong, whatever, Yadong. Well, I've been screwed with his name the whole time. Yadong, Song Yadong, I think his name is. But recognize that and slip to the inside of that jab, timing a perfect intercept overhand, which comes right over top and nicks him. And what I thought was so cool about this follow-up is all the different angles that he was punching him from. Right, he came over top of the hand, then he threw in that perfect lead hook, and then that shooting uppercut right up the middle, which snuck underneath that jab. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. It's a beautiful combination and timed exactly when it was supposed to be. It's such a good counter. It's my favorite counter to throw in fighting. When they throw the jab overhand right over top of it. There's risk to it because you're slipping to the inside of their jab, right? You'd be going to their belly side rather than to the outside, which is usually suggested when it comes to head movement because you might run into your opponent's power hand. But if you time an intercept counter with that head movement, then it's a lot safer because you should be hitting them and forcing them into a defensive stance versus into an offensive stance where if you were just slipping. So, right, when you hit somebody, they think defensive, they're not going to throw back, hopefully right in that moment, right? There's always risk to any movement. Oh, here we go back to it. I'm telling you, that front snap kick to the chin, that's 2023 right there. Having it in your face. And the backflip's coming back, too. He ain't leaving that behind. Backflip's coming back. That front, I thought he killed him when that happened. But any of those guys that sort of had the hunched forward stance, this is the counter for the wrestler. The front snap kick to the face. If you're fighting a wrestler and they're worried about getting kicked in the face, right, then it's an issue, right? A lot of guys try to time an uppercut. They try to time the knee. But if you can keep a little bit of space and threaten this kick, I don't know. What is the counter for it? You can try to catch it, but it's not exactly like a front kick to the body where maybe you'd be able to cup around it. It's scooping right up to your face. Maybe get underneath it if they miss and sort of drive them back over their other leg. Boom. That's karate. That's karate right there. Man, when that happened live, just sitting in the bar, this was probably the best card of the year. I can't remember who else was on it. Oh, wait. Was that the one with the Rose? I can't remember. You gotta love Chandler Style. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. This was Ride Out MMA. If you could leave a like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought of the video. If you thought my takes were shit, if you thought my takes were sick, I don't know. If you want me to do this again in the future, or you have other fights that you want to watch and sort of break down with me, that'd be really fun. Maybe we make this a live stream thing. I don't know. Anyways, subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos. I always really appreciate it, and I love talking with you guys. So let's get a conversation going. Anyways, see you next time. Bye.